Today I'm going to do a super simple front split follow along. So we're going to work active positions, passive positions. Now this is great to combine with your handstand training or just use it independently. So let's first isolate the hamstring. So I'm going to start in this lunge position. I'm going to straighten out the front knee. Now I want to lock that back as far as I can. So no bend in the knee whatsoever. So lock that back. See if you can get fingertips to the floor. If you can't get fingertips to the floor, just start there, or you could have yoga blocks or something here if you're super tight in that hamstring. If you can get fingertips pretty easy, see if you can go palms to the floor. And if you can go palms easily, walk the hands further and further forwards to wind up that hamstring even more. Make sure you're maintaining that knee being locked backwards. Think about lengthening the spine in that direction, so head towards the toe, not head towards the knee. So we don't want to be rounding through the spine. We want to be lengthening as best we can in that position. Now I'm going to hold this for around 30 seconds. Now you could increase these times if you wanted to. You could go 30 to 60 seconds. And then I'm just going to come back out, swap legs. Exactly the same setup. So lunge position, lock out that front knee, fingertips to the floor. Start to walk the hands forwards if you've got longer hamstrings. Making sure you're maintaining that knee locked backwards. Lengthening the spine, so head towards the toe. Try and limit the rounding in the spine, try and lengthen as best you can. Sitting back as well, so you're sitting the hip back and down. Nice, and then come back out of there and we're just going to a forward fold position. So locking the knees backwards, taking the elbows down towards the floor. So now both hamstrings at the same time. Seeing how close you can get those elbows towards the toes. Now you can see I'm doing little bounces here. Now that is more aggressive. Don't do this if you're super tight, but if you have good range there and you're nice and comfortable in that position, bounces can help get a little bit deeper. And then I'm going to come back out. Now I'm going to go into the quads, hip flexors. So I'm going to use my favorite, going up against the wall. If this is too aggressive, you could use a bench or a box. I'm just going to go foot up towards the wall, take the knee as close as I can back towards the wall if I can get all the way upright with the torso. Now if I can't get all the way upright with the torso and I look more like this, I'm going to move the knee further away and make sure I have that open hip position. But same thing, let's stick with the 30 seconds in that position. So we'll call that 15 already, and then 15 seconds longer, making sure you're nice and open there. If it's easy, you can take the heel to the side, take the butt back towards the wall, even tuck really hard under and see if you can get your low back towards the wall. 5 more seconds. And then we'll come back out, swap sides. Now that is concentrating more on the rec fem, the quadricep, which is also a hip flexor. So same setup there. Fully open through there, nice and upright torso. Move the foot to the side if you're flexible enough. See if you can get your butt back against the wall. There is an option to lift up the same side arm as well. So if I'm stretching that left leg, I lift up the same arm. Just make sure you maintain that tucking under of the pelvis. We don't want to be going into an anterior tilt. We don't want to increase the gap between your low back and the wall. We should be decreasing it, taking the low back towards the wall, keeping the torso nice and upright. 5 more seconds. And then I'm going to come back out. Now I'm going to start to put those two movements together. So I'm going to go through a lunge position. So I'm going to go into this one first. So there's the hamstring. So locking out the knee. And then I'm going to bend the knee and take the hip down towards the floor. So this is going to get more hip flexor on that back leg. So on the right leg in this position, driving the hip down as hard as I can towards the floor. Again, trying to keep the torso upright. Just be careful this one doesn't dump into your low back. If it does, decrease the intensity, pull back, try not to go so aggressively into the position. 10 more seconds. And then I'm going to straighten the leg, go back into that hamstring position again. And I could go here for 30 seconds, 20 seconds, 10 seconds, and you could alternate. Now, if you're doing 10 seconds, you would just go 10 seconds there, 10 seconds there, back to 10 seconds there, and you do multiple repetitions of that. There's pros and cons for both. I just mix it up and see how you go. Then obviously once you've done one side, swap over, do the same on the other side. So let's first go with the 30 seconds in the lunge position here for this left hip flexor. So trying to keep that posterior tilt, trying to keep the torso upright, driving the hip down as long as you don't feel it in the low back. You can play with going a little bit further with that front foot in terms of depth in that direction. Then I'm going to straighten this front leg, hands towards the floor, wind the hamstring up. Let's do a 10-second hold there. Really trying to be as aggressive as I can, as long as I'm feeling it in the calf and hamstring. And then back out of that into the lunge, into that hip flexor again. Another 10 seconds. And again, we could do repetitions there, in and out with shorter holds or longer holds, but just going between the two. Okay, now let's test our front split position. So I'm going to go back to that lunge position. Now from here, I can go in two different directions. I can take the heel forwards, so I could slide forwards in that direction, or I could take the knee backwards. Now both of those work. Some people have said that taking the knee backwards gets you into a more squarer, better position for your front split. Some people say sliding forwards. You could even put a slider under the heel. We'll try those in a second. But basically we want to try and square the hips as much as possible. Now once you get here, you should start to be able to feel whether you're tighter here or tighter back here in this back leg. I'm definitely tighter in the hip flexor than the hamstring. But ideally we want to try and have as upright torso as we can in that position. See if you can lift the hands. You might not be able to lift the hands. If you look like this, that's fine. Just try and have your torso nice and upright. And then swap over and test the other side. Now I recommend that you video from the side so you can see where you're at. So again, play with that heel sliding forwards or knee going backwards into that position, and just see how that feels. Again, I can see, am I tighter in the hamstring or am I tighter in the hip flexor? There, trying to keep the hips square as possible. We could go no hands, see where you're at there. Now some people would call that a passive position or a resting position in the front splits, because I'm putting as much of my legs on the floor as I can to support myself. So it's like assisted front splits. So now we'll go unassisted. So what I'm going to do now is take one foot that direction, one foot that direction. I'm not allowed to touch the floor. I'm not allowed to hold anything. I'm just going to see how deep I can get in this position. Now it's a bit tricky to get into the position. So I allow people to go down using their hands, but then once they're here, try and hold in that position. So now this is a different measurement. How low can you go now while maintaining an active position? So it's only heels, ball of the feet. Swap over, try the other side. Now it will feel like balance is off, but a lot of that is just the body fighting over the position of the pelvis or fighting over the pelvis. But that's two different measurements. Now if you really struggle with that, we can do a very similar one that's supported. So if my flexibility is not great, I could use boxes, a chair, P-bars to try and hold that position. Can let go a little bit, have slight assistance if I need it. You could hold sticks, or I could use yoga blocks or IKEA steps or something lower. Now another way to condition and open up the front split is to slide in and out of the position. So we set up in a lunge position, we lock the knee backwards. I'm using a slider on concrete. It's not ideal, it doesn't slide that well. A slider or cardboard on carpet is perfect. This is going to be a bit clunky. So I slide down a little bit, come back again. Do the same thing, go a little bit deeper, pull back again, and then go a little bit further. And just keep testing how far you can go down and how far you can pull back, with the goal of going all the way down to your range of motion and then pulling back out again. But I'll definitely do that. I'll do it a little bit, come back, so test it, see how it feels, and then go again. This one can be a little bit catchy for some people and they might feel it in their low back, so just be careful of that. Do something to open up the single leg hamstring, do something to open up the single leg quad hip flexor, and then put it together in holds. Now your holds could be more longer passive holds where you have something to lean against. So for me, and my flexibility, is I probably want to have something under here, maybe there, just to give me a little bit of support, try and square the hips as best I can. There, I can tell this hip flexor is still holding me back a little bit there, so I need to raise up just a touch higher. So probably there. And I'll do my 30 seconds, 45 seconds in this position. Then I'll swap it around and do the same on the other side. That might need a slightly different setup. Remember, your left to right is going to be quite different. And then 30 to 45 seconds there. But self-assess, be realistic, know what you should work on the most between your hip flexors, your quads, or your hamstrings. You'll find mobility, bodyweight strength, and handstand programs in my app, linked down in the description. Let me know if you have any questions in the comments, and I'll speak to you next time. Thanks, guys.